Hello guys, so I'm going to do a video on NFS Unbound with the RTX 3080. We're going to be starting off with 1080p at the high settings. Let's jump into it. Jumping into the settings, we are going to be playing the game at 1080p, as you can see. And this is the high settings. And so far, as you already saw, we are getting CPU bottlenecked, which is kind of unfortunate. But yeah, GPU sitting at 70% usage, so we might have to just skip the high preset and just move straight to the ultra preset. This game is running quite well so far. Obviously with a 3080 at 1080p, you would expect a bottleneck since this card is so powerful. So far this game does look a bit like NFS Heat in the menus anyway, but driving does feel pretty decent, and the game is running quite well as well. We're sitting at 120 FPS for now, but we definitely have some headroom there to play at 1440p high settings. Ooh, I could crash through that easy. I'm going to be hoping for 4K, maybe 60 FPS at Ultra. We do have DLSS available to us as well, which we can take advantage of 100%. And we can't use DLSS 3.0, unfortunately, this card doesn't support it, but I will have a 4090 video out straight after this, which I will be testing out DLSS 3.0 in that, which will be pretty sweet. You can probably get, hopefully, 200 FPS, ignoring the CPU bottleneck. Normally with EA games, they do run into some issues at launch, but so far it's ran perfectly with no issue. Alright, I think it might be time for us to just skip high settings and just go straight to Ultra, because GPU is sitting at 50% usage. We're getting heavily bottlenecked by the CPU, so not really much point in testing out the high settings at this point. Alright, let's jump into that real quick. Alright, jumping back into it. We're playing the game at Ultra settings now. I had to restart the game just to make sure everything applied properly. And let's go ahead and go through the settings right now. Oops, map. Graphics, and then 1080p. And obviously disabled for upscaling. But the rest are set to Ultra, which is the max preset for this game. And as you can see so far, the game is still running into a bottleneck with that CPU. GPU is still sitting at 60% usage. So this game is not very GPU intensive, it seems like, even though the recommended specs for this game is a RTX 2070. I think it seems like at 1080p you can get away with playing the game, but at 1060 it seems like at this point, maybe even 1050 Ti. I'll be trying those out later on down the line. CPU sitting at 70% usage. I am using a Ryzen 5800X for this video. I'm just borrowing it for now until I can upgrade the test bench. But yeah, even at Ultra settings, we are falling below 100 FPS, getting bottlenecked massively. GPU sitting at 60% usage, so don't forget, with the more powerful CPU, you'll probably be getting far better performance. So using DLSS at this point isn't going to do much for us, since we are getting bottlenecked, and it will just give us an extra bit of GPU headroom, which we don't need, since our GPU is already sitting at 60% usage. But on average, we're sitting around 95 to 120 FPS, maybe 130 FPS. Wow, we're jumping into the 70s right now. That is insane. Obviously, some settings are going to be more CPU bound, so we might have to optimize the settings a bit further to reduce the CPU bottleneck. As you can see, we are sitting in the 70s now at 1080p. And don't be too worried about the FPS right now, since we have plenty of headroom to play at 1440p and 4K. I'm guessing at 4K we can still hold 60 FPS. That would be my guess anyway. Maybe with some dips into the 50s, but if that does happen, then I can use DLSS to gain our FPS back. And I definitely do like the art style of this game. It does look pretty sweet. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and push it up to 1440p now. I think we spent a bit of time at 1080p already, and there's really not much for us to test since we're getting bottlenecked so heavily. Alright, and I'm back. So, after that 1080p potion, I had a bunch of issues at 1440p and 4K. The game just kept crashing and crashing and crashing in the intro. So I moved on and I did the 4090 video, and now I'm back to the 3080, and I'm gonna be playing the game at 1440p, still the Ultra settings, and look at that, no more CPU bottleneck. Now, although I've seen it in the intro, we do drop down into the 80% usage still. Oh, there you go. So we are still getting CPU bottlenecked at this point in 1440p, but FPS is doing very good, sitting above 100 FPS, but you will fall down into the 90s and 80s in those heavier scenes because of your CPU. Your GPU is fine, it's got plenty of power to play this game at 1440p max settings, just too CPU intensive for us, so you will still fall down to the 90s and 80s, But for the most part, going to be sitting above 100 FPS very easily. And the game runs perfectly as well. I played a couple of hours now at this point, and the game doesn't stutter or have any lag spikes that you can feel. The intro was very buggy and it crashed a lot, but after you get past that point, you can go ahead and tweak these settings and you'll be fine. Now, unfortunately, this card doesn't have DLSS 3.0 like we have with the RTX 4090 and 4080. We were able to get 200 FPS at 1440p max settings, which is beautiful, and at 4K we were able to get 150 FPS with DLSS 3.0 with that card. So unfortunately we can't use that here, and DLSS 2.0 isn't really going to be helpful since GPU is not even fully maxed out. I guess it is occasionally at 1440p, but you will still get bottleneck in those heavier scenes like I said before. So yeah, I'm gonna go and try it out anyway for you guys. Okay, so the game crashed. Who would have guessed? But I've got DLSS enabled now, so using the quality preset, and as you can see, GPU is sitting at 70 to 80% now, even as low as 65%. So for those of you who got more powerful CPUs, you can take advantage of DLSS. But for me, I'm kind of forced into using native 1440p and getting the FPS that I'm given. So FPS is going as high as 140, and we still have 20% GPU headroom as well. But on average, we're sitting at 120 FPS with a 30% GPU headroom. So yeah, for those of you who got 13th gen Intels, you'll be getting far better performance than this. Okay, so I believe with the 4090, I was getting around 100 FPS at 4K, and even still getting bottlenecked with the CPU, dropping down to the 80s. So with the 3080, we're sitting at 70 FPS. I think with those heavier scenes, we might drop down into the 60s, but at this point, we're going to be fully GPU bound. I don't think we're going to get CPU bottlenecked at this point. But who knows, maybe I'm jinxing it. I'm going to get CPU bottlenecked in a second. Those wing effects don't look good at all. I don't like that. Look at that, 63 FPS. Wow, 100% GPU usage. I think at this point you want to use DLSS, even though we do have some headroom left over. We're sitting in the 70s for the most part. I think DLSS might come in handy. Just play at quality settings. At 4K, DLSS looks perfect pretty much. Looks just as good as native. But so far, the game's not stuttering. It's running perfectly. It does crash for me with this 3080. 4090, it crashed a couple times at 8K, but 4K and 1440p didn't really crash at all. So yeah, this system is having a couple of issues. VRAM is sitting at 9 gigs, so we have a gig left. And we're playing the game at 4K max settings anyway, so I don't think we need more VRAM regardless. But still, we have a gig left over. We're cutting it kind of close. If you got a 3080 Ti or a 3080 12 gig, then you'll have no problem at all. You have 3 gigs left of the VRAM. I think I'm going to go turn on DLSS now, and hopefully I don't run into a crash. I'm going to go ahead and pause the game and run into the main menu. Did it crash when I paused it? There's no way. Here we are. 4K, quality DLSS, and we're getting the same performance as an RTX 4090 at 4K native. I don't know. We're pretty close to it though. Sitting in the low 100s. But we can drop that into the 90s still, the low 90s. This looks beautiful still. Maybe the image does look a little bit softer, but the quality looks pretty good. I can't really complain about this at all. I can't really see any blurriness or anything like that. FPS is doing slightly better than quality, maybe by 10 to 20 FPS at most. But the quality looks pretty much the same. Can't really complain. This looks very similar to the quality preset, and we're getting a couple of extra frames, so it's worth the trade-off. I think it's definitely worth using. And GPU is sitting at 89% for a second. It was getting bottlenecked, but for the most part, it's going to be sitting in the low to mid 90s and occasionally up to the high 90s. This game is very optimized on the GPU side of things and not very optimized on the CPU side of things, unfortunately. But if you've got a powerful enough CPU, then you can go ahead and use DLSS at 4K and have a good time. But if you don't, then 60 FPS will be the way to go. No DLSS, game looks very sharp and runs really well as well. Shouldn't have too many crashes for you. I'm just having a couple of issues on my computer, but I think for the average person, this should be fine. Alright, that's it for the video, guys. If you made it this far, appreciate you, as we'll frequently see. And like and subscribe to my channel as well. See you next time.